Hello everyone, I'm Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and money color commentator. On today's show, Roth IRAs, part 2 in our series on selecting between IRAs and Roth IRAs, sponsored by LifeSize Solutions and the Society for Financial Awareness. Well, welcome everyone, and we're going to talk a little bit about Roths themselves, Roth IRA. Now, when they instituted this was another savings vehicle for people to add on to their 401k or their IRA or their SEP IRA or their 403b or their 457 plans if you're in the government. They're looking for different ways for people to save, and this was a great one. Now, the negative, I guess you could say, to Roth IRAs is there's no tax deduction. So everything accumulates tax deferred. When it comes out, it's tax free. Why is that important? Again, Social Security looks at income coming in at the provisional income test. It tests to see what areas of income or revenue that you have coming in is actually submittable, and it has to be submitted to the Social Security provisional income test to find out if your Social Security benefits get taxed. So it's really important to look at Roth because it's only one of the 4 products that actually will not fall on the provisional income test and cause your Social Security benefits to be taxed. Remember, HSA accounts are also that, life insurance, withdrawals to basis and policy loans to gain on cash value life insurance, as well as reverse mortgage. All those 4 areas, including the Roth, do not fall on the provisional income test of Social Security. And like I used it as an example in the first segment, municipal bond income, all of that, even though everybody buys it to try to use some kind of tax advantage or tax favored application, all the income flows over to the Social Security provisional income test, and that can cause your Social Security to be taxed at an ordinary income tax rate when, of course, you bought the municipal bonds to try to avoid it. So I want to look at looking at Roth IRAs. Now, let me just say from the get-go, if I had the option and I saw that I work for a living, I'm either self-employed or my employer does not match my contribution, and I'm somewhere in the blended tax rate. Again, remember we use this word effective tax bracket. We're in a marginal progressive tax system. If you blend your tax bracket, figure out what it is after you take your tax deductions, after you take your tax exemptions and your tax credits, you're going to find yourself, most middle Americans are right around between 20 and 22% blended rate. It could be a little higher, it could be a little lower. If I'm in that rate of 20 to 22%, and on top of it, I'm getting no match from my employer or I'm self-employed and I'm not matching my own, I don't know if I should do anything but a Roth and try to take advantage of the Roth IRA all the way up to its maximum $5,500 annual contribution for myself, my wife. I also want to be able to add another $1,000 if I'm a little older so I can use the catch-up provision. I think that's when you start looking at this kind of money is really exciting to look at Roth IRA. If I'm not in a high tax bracket, if I'm not getting a match at work, I think Roth should be looked at. In fact, actually, the tandem purchase, in my opinion, strictly on the basis of taxes and the taxes that won't be triggered on your Social Security, the tandem is fully funding your HSA accounts and fully funding your Roth IRA. Those 2 items, I think, are the best tax plays that you can have. The good thing about the HSA is it is deductible, and it's a big number. I think it's like $7,900 coming up in 2018. Unlike traditional IRAs, contributions can be made from a Roth even after you're 70 and a half. So I have people all the time, Steve, I really don't need the money, but the government says all qualified monies have to be taken out, and they have to have a required minimum distribution at age 70 and a half. But not so with Roths, not so with HSAs, not so with life insurance. Some of these are good examples and exemptions to that law. So if I'm looking at, I still want to save money, I don't need the money, I want to park it in my Roth IRA, I can exceed age 70 and a half and keep on my contributions. Today, if we're going to explore an approach to help you evaluate if it's possible and the advantages for you to convert your existing traditional. Now, before we get into this, and I'm going to get into this mostly in segment 3, 4, and 5, you have to know your tax bracket. Once you've decided, let's say your employer does let you match. Well, I would totally be doing that all day long. 401k, I'm going to go ahead and do the match and at least do that. But I still may have other monies I want to put aside for retirement. And so remember, since we're living longer, whatever we're talking about putting aside today is probably not going to be enough. I don't know what Social Security is going to be for Gen X and Gen Y. I certainly don't understand what it's going to be looking like by the time millennials take constructive receipt, which could be, think about it, The short term on that is maybe age 70 when you could first take it out as a millennial. So you just got to keep in mind, we're going to be living a lot longer. I think some of the numbers that we're putting aside monies, I would definitely put aside the match, the employer match in my 401k. But after that, I might be looking at Roth or HSA accounts because those I think are really good ideas. So when I'm looking at that, the first thing I want to know is, am I a single taxpayer? Am I head of household? Am I married filing jointly? Am I married filing separately? I want to be able to identify how the IRS identifies me. And sometimes if you have a choice, you need to do the math both ways to see which one is the best tax advantage for you. You'll be surprised sometimes when you take into account, you run both these filing separately and filing together to find out, is the math really on your side one way or the other? And you may want to change the label that the IRS uses for you. The next thing is my bracket. Now, I've said before, because we're in a marginal progressive tax bracket, most Americans are filing jointly if you're a couple. And that demarcation line is somewhere between $75,000 and $153,000. So that's a pretty big swath, a pretty big line of revenue. That number right in here, you're going to be paying somewhere in that 25% tax bracket. If you're low at the lower end of the $75,000, your job is to use your top of the line, your exemptions, the best tax deductions you can, really thoroughly go through it and apply any tax credits to see if you can get below the $75,000 demarcation line, $75,900. If you're already up and you have headroom and you're making $120,000, it isn't going to matter because you're going to make $153,000. You still got headroom to go up before you go to the next bracket, which is 28. You may want to be able to say, hey, listen, I'm already paying that anyways. Why don't I take all the way up at least to that amount and manage my revenue? Remember, many employers really are endeared to actually setting up deferred compensation plans so that if you say, I still want to get paid, I just don't want to take constructive receipt of it right now. And remember, that's a great option. If you're a rainmaker, a key employee, if you're running the show for your boss, you may want to apply and say, listen, I'd like to take some of this money and defer it. I really don't need it. I just still wanted to have it paid. That deferral process could send money into your retirement time when your bracket may be lower. Now remember, the argument here is the bracket going to be lower? I don't know. We're looking at the debt that we're going to look at. I'm going to look at this in segment 5. When you look at everything the pressures that are around our economy, I just can't see how we can stay at this lower rate, even though right now the Congress is looking at changing the rates in the tax code and actually lowering the rates. But for the long haul, I don't see how we can do it. We're $20 trillion in debt and over $80 trillion in federal obligations, and that's Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, not including government pensions. Do you believe taxes are going to go up higher? Now, I don't want to talk you into it. I'm just looking at the facts. And when we hit segment 5, I'll talk about here are the ramifications of our present condition in our country and the odds of the tax bracket staying static or going lower for the long term. I just can't see it. So if the taxes are going to go up, then all of a sudden you need to start looking at other areas. Where can I put my money in tax-advantaged or tax-deferred vehicles? And there's 4 tax-free and some tax-deferred ideas that you can do to bring your tax bill down. Actually, remember, that's the bottom line. We look at it. The reason I ask these questions is that if taxes are going to be lower in the future, it might be beneficial for you to remain in a traditional IRA. So if you think that you're going to be in a lower bracket in the future, then hey, go ahead and get the tax deduction. Hopefully you're getting a match. But if you're in a lower bracket and you're not getting a match, Roth becomes a player. But again, you have to look at, should I be in an IRA taxable? Or like, if you think we're going to be lower, all my entire career, we were taught as financial advisors that when you go into retirement, you'll be in a lower bracket. But this all could change. Our IOU bill, now when you collect the $20 trillion in debt, the $80 trillion in obligations, we're over $100 trillion in debt today. We're already heading into the 3rd generation of making our grandchildren obligated to pay the debt that we actually generated. So it's really important to start thinking in your mind, the odds are high that we're probably going to have higher taxes. The odds are high that we might have a little problem with inflation, with a little bit of power, our purchasing dollar being eroded. So you have to start thinking taxes is a big deal today, and taxes is going to be a really big deal in retirement. In retirement, long-term care is a great cost, but it's not as big as taxes. So managing your tax bill in retirement is the #1 issue, and a Roth IRA could play a major component in your thinking and a good product for retirement. Don't forget to watch our next segment on converting qualified monies to Roth IRAs. Part 3 in our series on selecting between an IRA and a Roth IRA. And keep in mind, before moving forward with any of the ideas on our show, always consult your tax consultant, legal counsel, or your financial advisor. You've been watching Steve Savant's Money, the name of the game.